Good afternoon, everyone. I do believe there's a video to start off, so I'll give you some 1 minute to watch this.
The legacy that joined the stock market in the early 20th century. First pioneered temperature control in buildings. Made buying groceries as quick as a flash. Helped pilots avoid obstacles. And made cars cleaner for the environment. It's the innovative legacy that has been part of every manned American mission to space. But today, we're focused on creating an even better future. We're developing the life support system that'll make it possible to breathe on Mars. Navigating modern challenges here on Earth. Creating renewable biofuels to keep the world moving. Bridging the gap between data and action. Safely mapping the weather for pilots and passengers. And rewriting the rules of technology with quantum computing. Because over the last 100+ years, we've learned the future doesn't just happen. The future is what we make it.
Okay, so as you can probably tell from my language and also from my accent, I'm not from Slovakia. I'm from the UK, but I am the European sales leader for healthcare for Honeywell. Just see if I can... This is somebody else's slide deck, so we'll get that in a second. So one of the things I'm going to talk about today is around smart operating rooms. One of the things that happened during the pandemic was that everything changed. One of the big things was that when something happens, everybody goes into panic mode. And what they do is they start to look at all the different solutions they can do to help from a technical aspect, from a clinical aspect. But what they forget is that one of the things that they need to do is they need to talk to each other. They need to be interoperable. So when we have people going down a one-way system in a hospital, because that's the way to go so that they don't pass on infection to other people, how do we know then what the ventilation strategy will be? So as you can see, we have the new hospital norm. One of the things, as I said, that you have there is, how do we know if people are wearing the right PPE? How do we know if people are infected, are in the right areas for ventilation control? How do we know where access control is to make sure that people are going into the right areas? All these sorts of elements. So the one thing that we had was survival mode, and we survived. But what we need to do is something far better than that to make smart hospitals of the future. So the key thing is we need to make data interoperable, because only by having data interoperable will hospitals become smart. And one of the big things that we find is that once you start taking the data and you start working with the data, you then see what is the art of the possible. And what you need to do is you need to focus on where the key hubs are for this data to flow. So you'll take things through from your security, from your building management systems, from your energy management, and aggregate that data to put it into a data lake. Then from there, you can start to make informed decisions about your hospital. One of the big things that we've done is around smart operating rooms. And one of the first things that people said was, we want to be digital. We want to be smart. We want to do something different. We want to be innovative. All these things are very good, but what does it actually mean? The key thing is to take an example of a really core element of a hospital and work with that and find out if it's successful there, then it can be rolled out across the rest of a hospital. When we spoke about this project initially, the first thing that somebody said to me was, I have 80,000 euros and I want to save energy. So we know operating rooms are running 24/7 typically. We don't like to switch off ventilation. Everybody's nervous about the equipment that's in there. So why not start with the most complex situation in the hospital and see if we can be successful? So what we did was we started to look at things that could save energy. We can set back on the ventilation strategy when the operating room is not in use. We can switch off lights. We can take equipment that's on standby and switch that off as well, but we can put it back on when it's required. But the big thing is that only does so much, and everybody here is thinking, what has that got to do with me? What has that got to do with the requirements of a hospital in today's era? Well, the big thing is that by taking this data and talking to the clinical team, we can then start to understand what the clinical needs are of the hospital and what the pressures are. How many beds are in a hospital, and how many more beds do people want in a hospital to make it more efficient? There's never enough beds. Is there enough operating rooms for people to get treated in time? And then once they're treated, do they pick up infections? How long do they stay in hospital as a result of picking up those infections? What is the additional care and the additional resource for people to look after those who've had those infections? So what we did was we looked at all the data, we started processing the data and making it fit with the clinical needs. So when the people were walking into an operating room, the operating room was available. It was at the right temperature. It was at the right humidity. I've heard this story where apparently if it's not at the right humidity, if you have a hip replacement, the cement can harden too quick, and then you have to have the hip broken and reset because the humidity has made the cement dry too fast. So, things like that might seem ridiculous, but it has an impact. So again, you look at the assets that are in the room. How many assets are there? Are the assets available? Are they fit for purpose? Do we know that they're there? So all these things we're taking into consideration, elements such as medical gases. Do we have enough oxygen for what we're doing? So when the people who really matter and the big costs in the hospital, like surgeons and all the staff, walk into an operating room, they can do the job that they're paid to do, and the hospital does the job that it's there to do, which is to cure people and give everybody a quality of life. So it's really, really important that the key thing that we have is around the data being there to start to drive all those clinical aspects. So once we then started to look at that, we came up with a result as to what we could do in terms of the benefits to healthcare. And this was something that we did in association with an organization called the AIP Group. If the slide will move. If not, if you can do it manually, that's fine. So with this one, what we wanted to do was we, as a business, did not want to say to everybody, we're the best, look at what we can do, and aren't our results good? Because we all know when we walk into a McDonald's, and it's the best symbol I can use for that, is what we see on the board above when we order a Big Mac meal is not the reality when we get it home. We open the box, and there's no pickle, there's no sauce, and it doesn't look like anything that we saw advertised. So the key thing that we wanted to do was when we say what we wanted to do with the operating rooms, is it could be verified independently by academic research. So they could turn around and say, we have tested the data, we know that the data is accurate, and we can then say, hand on heart, that it is the right thing to do within the healthcare environment. So when they took the data through, as I mentioned at the start of the project, it was very much based around energy efficiency. So with the investment that was made on the operating rooms, the return on investment was less than 1 year. But that was only 40% of the value of the project. The other 30% was in the reduction of resource. So the amount of time people were going into operating rooms where they couldn't operate because it wasn't at the right temperature, it wasn't at the right lighting level, it didn't have all the assets in there. By the time everything was prepared and ready for that operating room, you had lost all that resource, all that valuable time, and what the purpose of the hospital is there for is lost. So 30% was then in the value of that. So you're talking about 400,000 to 600,000 euros in terms of added value from having this in place. And then what they looked at was how many people were operated on and their length of stay in hospital and the amount of secondary infections that were picked up as a result of being in that operating environment. And by having the right analysis and data and all the solutions being interoperable and pulling together to drive the results within the operating room, again, a further 30% saving was made in the reduction of cost of care for people who had been in these operating rooms. So again, another 300,000 to 400,000 euros in that space. So when we talk about smart, we talk about hospitals, we talk about innovation, we talk about all these things, And here in Slovakia, this is an opportunity to put things right. All I'll say is when we look around everybody in the room and the people who are here today, everybody has a value in what they're providing. Again, a good case there was Konica Minolta, where they're talking about people falling on the floor. But if that's linked to a system where you can then bring the lights on if that patient's fallen on the floor, or if that patient is up in the middle of the night, and therefore you can turn heating on to make sure that they're comfortable if they want to read a book or watch TV, these are all things that help with patient care. And it's through that way of working that we will produce smart hospitals for the future and benefit everything. So I see that time is coming to an end. We do have a stand outside. I would be more than happy to talk to people about how we can start to look at this journey that we go on. In the UK, it's expected that these types of solutions will save billions of pounds a year in the healthcare industry within the UK. So there's a really big opportunity here to do things right. And as I say, it's backed by independent, verified results. So it's not me sitting here saying that. We can show you the results that are there. You can interpret that. You can look at that. And as I say, hospitals are here for people, and it's about curing people. It's not about my product. It's not about anybody else's product in this room. It's about people being cured and people being given the best possible quality of life. And it all starts with data, interoperability of the data, and everybody working together to provide smart hospitals for the future. So thank you very much.
To bol pán John Dorward. Ďakujem pekne.